Good morning. I'm just checking this is working before we start our live stream at 10:30. I'm going to transition to the Scratch program and show you the game. At the moment my hedgehog's died, unfortunately. Let's bring it back to life. There we go. Hedgehog's moving around and eating some beetles. That all looks good. I'm going to transition back to the holding screen and I'll go live properly in about 5 minutes at 10:30. Good morning and welcome to the live Q&A session for the hedgehog conservation game in Scratch. Hopefully you've watched the video just now about how to add the badger and the deep hole to your game and have possibly managed to make that work. You might have been pretty quick if you've done it already. If you've got any questions at all, either about today's lesson or about something from one of the other lessons, then please just ask. You can ask in the chat or you can send a message through the website, and I'll show you how to do that again a bit later. So let's start with some common problems that you might find with this game. I think the one that I've come across most often is not being able to find the right drop down, and I'll show you what I mean. So in the deep hole, which we added today, you need the touching block, and if you click the arrow here, you should be able to find hedgehog in there. But I know that some people have problems finding that. The thing is, make sure all your sprites are named correctly. So you can name them down here. So you click on the sprite and then here is the name field. And also make sure you're making the code in the right place. So we want to make this code in the deep hole sprite. So make sure you can see the deep hole in the corner of the script editor, and that deep hole is highlighted in blue in the sprites at the bottom here. So then you should be able to find that. So hopefully that's fairly simple. Okay, let's have a look at what other common problems you might have. Right, the other one that's an easy mistake to make is that when your hedgehog dies, I'll see if I can show you this one. I'll leave my hedgehog alone and hopefully it will carry on and die. So what can happen is that you don't see these messages, and I'll just change these and show why that might be the case. So for example, if you look in the looks category, we've got say hello for 2 seconds and say hello, and it's easy to grab this say hello one instead. And if we use this one, I'll show you what happens. So if I go and touch the deep hole now, so I'm taking my hedgehog to the deep hole. There we go, I touch it and I've died, but we didn't see this message. That's because it happens so quickly. We all know that computers work very quickly running code. So it's doing the say block quickly, so quickly we don't see it, and it moves straight on to stop everything. So make sure you get this other one, say hello for 2 seconds. You need that delay in there, okay? I'm going to take that out of my code and put it back together again. As you can see, I've got the say deep holes kill hedgehogs for 2 seconds. So make sure you're using that one. There we go, so that should work now. If I go there, you should be able to see those blocks. But it's an easy mistake to make. There we go, so it stays for 2 seconds. You can of course change that if it's not long enough for the person to read it. You can make it a longer time. That's not a problem. Right, let's see what other things you might come across. So the big thing we added today was this badger. I hope you enjoyed my drawing of it. It's quite tricky to draw the badger, isn't it? Hopefully you did a good job too. So here's my badger. And one problem you might find is that when you click the green flag, it doesn't look like your badger is walking. In the code, we added the code to switch to next costume. So that's why we added these. So we've got badger, badger 2 and badger 3. And when you were making them, you'll have made small changes to them. So can you see the tail in this one is slightly over to the side, and here the tail's straight. So make sure you make little changes, but they've got to be big enough to be seen. I think mine I could do with making a few more changes, so I'll show you how we can do that. This option here, this tool, is really helpful. I'll just click away from it and click on that one. So this allows us to select the points around the badger. You can see when you click on something, it comes up with lots of different points and you can move these individually. That's quite good for making small changes to it, but it is quite fiddly work. If you need to, you can zoom in here, so click the plus, and that's really helpful because you can just see things much closer. and then you can move these little dots around to make small changes to your badger. Let me see if I can move this feet around a little bit. So I could move that one down there. And if you want to go back to normal size, click this equals there. There we go. And click somewhere else and you can see how that works. So make sure you make those little changes in there. And then in the code for the badger, we've got this next costume. You might want to also look at changing this time because the default is 1 second. 1 second we found is too long. So try and use 0.5 or even less. Have a look and see what works for your badger, sorry, because your badger will look different to mine. Totally different, I imagine. Right, what other problems might you find? So you might find that the badger just goes round and round in circles, and that's an easy mistake because we added this pick random block to the badger code. So this is the code section we're looking at here. If we take out this pick random block, and so for example if you forgot to add it, then there we go, then the badger will go round and round in circles. So there we go, it's just going round and round in the same place. It's very obvious that you've just programmed it to turn round in circles, which isn't very challenging to the person playing. So that's why we add this pick random block and then put this in there so that the badger will choose a random amount to turn. You could try to change those numbers if you want to. I think this makes it look good enough that it's moving around and doing different things and is a bit unpredictable. So check that in your code if your badger's going round in circles. Right, let's have a look at other things that you might have a problem. We did do some fiddly stuff with the beetles and worms, didn't we? So we had to add some code to all of them to check that the badger can eat them. And so it's easy to miss something and you'll find that one of your worms doesn't get eaten or one of your beetles doesn't get eaten by the badger. If you just watch and see, so this badger has eaten one beetle, then he's headed for a worm, yep, that one's worked. If it's not working on yours, what you need to do is check the code in each one. You've got to be diligent. I know it takes a while, but go through each one and make sure you've got the code. So I'm going to stop it so the hedgehog's not distracting me. And let's have a look at the code. So you need this bit and make sure it's within the forever loop because if it's outside of it, it won't work at all. We need it connected inside the forever loop after this other if loop. So if the worm is touching the hedgehog, it will disappear. And if it's touching the badger, it will disappear. And you need to check each worm and each beetle to make sure it's got that. If you can't find the code, you can right click and go clean up blocks. Then you can see things a bit more clearly. Here we go, we've got the touching badger here as well, haven't we? And check the other ones. So make sure you've got that in all your code. Debugging in Scratch often means just going through things slowly and patiently, trying to find where the problem is, because it's probably something just really simple that you've missed. We've got it there. And here, touching badger, hide. And here, touching badger, hide. And remember, we use the backpack sometimes to copy code across. So if you haven't got it in one of them, then you can grab this block, put it in the backpack like this, and that copies it. So it's still in this beetle too, except it hasn't copied it this time, but it should copy it. Let me grab it again. There we go, it's gone blue. There we go. So it's in the backpack, this long code there. So you can use that and add it to any of the other beetles or worms that you've got. So remember, that's an easy way to do it. You can also use Control-C and Control-V if you're familiar with using the keyboard shortcuts. Right, this badger is also eating all the beetles and worms. So let's watch here. Can you see the badger's eaten, I think it's eaten most of the beetles already. And the hedgehog hasn't even got started. So a problem you might find is that it's hard to win the game now because the badger's eating stuff too. You've got a competitor, and that's a bit more realistic as well, isn't it, that the hedgehog has some competitors in life. So let's look at the hedgehog code here. Now my hog health is 100, and if I go over to the hog house, so I think, okay, I'm going to try and see if I can win the game. It's going to say, hog house, sorry, your health isn't good enough, try again. Because the badger's eaten everything, so the only thing I can eat is that worm over there. So that would take my health up to 110 if I can manage to avoid the badger. I could have a few drinks at the pond, but I'm not really going to get it high enough to win. Let me check my code and see what I put to win the game. There we go, where is it? Here we go, this is the code section. I'm going to hide the backpack and make the code area bigger so you can see this better. There we go, so this is the bit that discusses winning the game or losing the game. And we decided on this value. I've got 151 in my game. You'll have something different possibly depending how many worms and beetles you had. But with the badger competing for stuff, that's probably going to be too high now. I'm going to change it to 140 and try that. It's something you'll have to experiment with. There's no right answer here. It depends how much your badger eats, and that's, entirely by chance. So you might want to change that. If you've put it in the text here, remember to change it here, because in the tutorial on the website, it says to put it in here too. It says, sorry, your health isn't good enough. You need to have 150 points or something like that. So remember to change it in the text here if you change it here as well, if it's mentioned. So you just have to experiment a bit with that one and see what number is good to allow the hedgehog to win. Lovely. Well, I think that's the common problems. I'll just check and see if there's any questions we've had. No, nothing come in at the moment. So if you do have any questions, please ask them on the chat or through our website. I'll show you how to ask through the website in case you haven't seen that. So on the website, which is earthgames.uk, if you go to Learn, click on Ask an Expert. Here we go. You can put your details down and send a message. You'll need a parent or guardian's email address if you haven't got one. Right, so you can send us any questions you've got and where you're stuck. If you can, it would be helpful to have a link to your project or some pictures of the code in there so you can tell us exactly what's wrong. The easiest way to give us a link is to share your project. So let me show you how to do that. At the top here, you should have this share button. If you can't see a share button, it means that your email hasn't been confirmed. When you log into Scratch, you might see a big orange bar going across the top. It'll say there that your email hasn't been confirmed, and you can resend that email and then get your parent or guardian or teacher to click on that, and then you can share it. If they don't want you to share it, I'm afraid that's more tricky. You can download it, so you can go to File and Save to your computer, and then you can attach it to an email and send it to us instead. So that's another way to do it if you can't share it. So when you're ready to share, click on Share. And in here you have to put some instructions, so how the student plays the game, how the person plays the game. So instructions would be like, use the arrow keys to eat the food and make it to the hog house. So add some instructions to make sure someone can play that when they come across it. So I'm not going to tell them what the hazards are. I said make sure you avoid the hazards, and we'll leave it at that. So how did you make this project? You might want to refer to Hedgehog Republic or Earth Games UK. But you can see up here that it does refer to the projects that you've used before. So remember we used a remix for the original, didn't you? When you've finished, you can amend the title as well. You can just go back and see inside again, and that will be shared now. And you can see it says shared at the top. So now if you select this link for your project and do copy, so Control C, and then paste into this Ask a Code Expert um, message here, then we can see your game. Also, when you've finished your game and want to share it with us, well, even if you've not finished, it would be lovely to see your games. So you can email us that link, and we can see your games. It'd be fantastic to see what your badges look like, see if you've done a better job than me. And remember, if you get stuck at all, these tutorials are on our website and go step by step through how to make everything, and also have the video help on here as well. Well, that covers all the common things that I think happen during making this game. I'll just check if there's any more questions. Let's have a look. No, it looks like there's no more questions today. And I look forward to seeing you next week. So next week we're going to be adding more gardens in. So that's going to be a lot of fun. So the hedgehog will be able to go through gates on the side here into other gardens. So it makes it into a more complicated game, but much more fun. So please join us next week at 10 o'clock for the lesson, and then 10:30 for the live Q&A. Thanks, bye.